Biostimulation. This is in continuation with the first part of the process of biostimulation, where we had discussed about what is the process. So basically, biostimulation is the process where we enhance the growth of already present organisms or indigenous organisms at polluted site by adding certain nutrients or by optimizing the conditions like pH, temperature, which are required for the active growth of the organisms and their metabolic processes. This method is used for environmental remediation, in agricultural remediation where the soil gets contaminated with the chemicals like insecticides, pesticides, or some chemical fertilizers. It can also be used for the treatment of waste from medical and pharmaceutical industries, and also it is used in some industrial processes where the waste is generated in the form of hydrocarbons or dyes. The method of biostimulation is used for decontamination of soil and groundwater, for removal of the contaminants which are present in the soil like insecticides, pesticides and chemical fertilizers, or if the effluent from the textile industries or pharmaceutical industries are getting mixed with the water or soil, they can be remediated using the process of biostimulation. Biostimulation can involve adding nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus to contaminated soils to boost the growth and activity of indigenous microorganisms. The indigenous microorganisms might be capable of degrading the pollutants such as hydrocarbons, pesticides, and heavy metals. For example, in petroleum contaminated soils, adding nutrients can stimulate the growth of oil degrading bacteria, ultimately accelerating the degradation of hydrocarbons. Oil spill cleanup. To address the environmental damage which is caused by the oil spills, mainly by ships in the oceans, for this purpose also the process of biostimulation can be used. Biostimulation techniques can be used to enhance the activity of oil degrading microorganisms in the affected area. This can involve applying nutrient mixtures or oxygen to promote microbial growth and increase the rate of oil degradation. This approach helps to reduce the environmental impact of oil spills more efficiently than physical and or chemical methods alone. The bacteria which are mainly involved in oil spill cleanup include the species of Pseudomonas. Limitations of this method include the complexity of contaminated environments. Environmental pollution often involves a mixture of different contaminants. It might contain a mixture of different aromatic hydrocarbons. Some might be having chlorine or other halogens in their group, or it might be a mixture of different heavy metals which can vary widely in their chemical properties and toxicity. This complexity can make it difficult to identify the most effective biostimulation strategies, as different organisms have different capabilities of degrading pollutants. So, it is very crucial to know which organism is more involved in the degradation of the pollutant, and then the conditions which are suitable for enrichment and growth of that particular organism need to be employed. Environmental conditions is the second factor which limits the efficiency of biostimulation process. Factors such as soil pH, moisture, temperature, and oxygen levels can vary greatly across different sites. These conditions can affect microbial activity and may not always be ideal for the biostimulation methods used. Sometimes it is difficult to maintain the required conditions in situ. So in such processes, the process or the method of biostimulation might be limiting one. Microbial community dynamics. Native microbial populations are the main component in the process of biostimulation, as we are only trying to enhance their growth and not adding any additional organisms. The effectiveness of biostimulation relies on the presence and activity of indigenous microorganisms that are capable of degrading pollutants. If the native microbial community lacks, the necessary degradation pathways or is not well suited to the contaminant, biostimulation may have limited success. There is also possibility of competition and predation. Microbial populations are subject to competition with other microorganisms and potential predation. This can affect their ability to degrade the pollutants effectively. Nutrient limitations and imbalance. Nutrient requirements is the main phenomenon where the growth of organism is a crucial factor. Biostimulation often involves adding nutrients to support microbial growth. However, excessive or imbalanced nutrient addition can lead to nutrient imbalances, which will favor the growth of non-targeted microorganisms, and it might potentially lead to secondary pollution issues. For example, nutrition runoff that causes eutrophication. It also results in limited bioavailability. That means some contaminants which are present in the environment may be bound to soil particles or other rendered inaccessible to microbes. If the particles of or the molecules of contaminants are adhered to some other molecule, they become unavailable to the microorganisms, limiting their bioavailability, and thus the effectiveness of biostimulation is limited. Toxicity and persistence of contaminants. High toxicity. Some pollutants such as heavy metals or highly persistent organic pollutants can be toxic to the microorganisms, reducing their effectiveness in degrading these substances. So sometimes the concentration of pollutant might be such that in presence of that much concentration of the pollutant, organisms might not survive. And degradation products, that means the byproducts which are obtained after the degradation. The degradation of some contaminants can produce intermediates which are also toxic, and they might pose some environmental risk that complicates the cleanup process. Scalability and cost. Application scale. While biostimulation can be effective on small scale, scaling up the process for larger contaminated sites can be challenging. Sometimes it may happen that in the laboratory we might get very promising result where the organisms are giving good bioremediation, but when we increase the scale and if we try to do the field studies, there might be some limitation in the process of bioremediation. This may involve significant cost for nutrient addition, monitoring and management. Also, economic feasibility is the limitation for the process. The cost of implementing biostimulation methods, including the purchase of nutrients, monitoring, and potential site preparation, can be very high. This may not always be economically feasible, especially for large or severely contaminated sites. Monitoring and assessment is the factor which needs to be done with trained personnel. Monitoring complexity. Assessing the effectiveness of biostimulation requires comprehensive monitoring of microbial activity, pollutant levels, and environmental conditions. This can be complex and resource intensive. Data interpretation. Interpreting the results of biostimulation efforts can be challenging, especially if changes in pollutant concentrations or microbial activity are influenced by the factors other than the biostimulation treatment. As the organisms are present in their natural habitat, there might be several other factors which are affecting the growth and metabolic activities of the organisms that are involved in the process of biostimulation. Regulatory and public perception issues. Regulatory constraints, regulations and guidelines for the use of biostimulation technologies may vary by region, and compliance with these regulations can impact the implementation and effectiveness of the biostimulation strategies. As here we are enhancing the growth of bacteria or fungi in the sites of the pollution, some regulatory constraints are there. How much nutrients to be added, to which extent the growth is to be allowed. All these things need to be monitored properly and compliance need to be achieved. Also, there are some public concerns about the safety and effectiveness of biostimulation methods, particularly if they involve the use of genetically modified organisms or large-scale chemical additives, which might act as secondary pollutants themselves. Environmental impact. There might be some unintended consequences. The introduction of large number of microorganisms or nutrients can have unintended ecological consequences, such as altering local microbial communities or affecting soil health or water ecosystem in ways that are not immediately apparent. So all these processes need to be done under the supervision and need to be monitored properly to get maximum efficacy of the process.